Welcome, everybody. It's time once again for the next chapter with Charlie Hedges as he explores turning the page on his life and yours. Hey, Charlie.
Hey, Paul. I've got to say, yikes. This summer has been delightfully eventful. I will be or have been out of state or out of country for nearly 7 weeks in July and August, which means I haven't been home much. Visiting 7 countries, 2 states, and then also my couple of 3-day trips to the Abbey for retreat and spiritual direction. All I can say is yippee for the retired life. But then I must say, someday we're going to have to do a show on the misunderstood meaning of retirement, because retirement is so cool. My guest today is another very diligent and busy retired guy. Rand Selig has an MBA from Stanford and undergraduate degrees in mathematics and psychology. He has managed hundreds of complex projects in his career and has run his own financial services firm for over 35 years. I love this. Rand has lived and worked in Europe, Asia, Mexico, and the Caribbean. He was also a Little League coach and a Scoutmaster and has served on numerous boards. He calls himself a rolled-up-your-sleeves conservationist committed to helping others and Mother Earth. Rand is my kind of guy. Let's welcome him. Rand Selig, welcome to the next chapter with Charlie.
Hey, Charlie, it's great to be with you and Paul today. I'm looking forward to our conversation.
Great. Me too. We had a fun talk earlier in the week, and we plan to continue with that. And I felt after that time we have so much to talk about. So what I'm going to do, I was going to start right with the difficult questions, and I said, nope, I'll do an easy one. So we'll lay the path for you, and the easy question may not be that easy. I don't know. But you have a very personal definition of success. So tell me, Rand, how do you define success?
Maybe it sounds personal, but I believe everybody needs to define success for themselves, because the standard definitions that are pushed down our throats a little bit, certainly encouraged by our society, pretty narrow, really deal only with financial things. And I think we all do, without all that much thinking about it, that success goes way beyond just financial things. In my case, it deals with a group of things, and the real success is the integration then of this group. Just to highlight a few. One is having deep and enduring relationships. And one of the things I think that's really important about aging well, we all age, but not everybody ages well, is to have friends of all ages. But then there comes depth as well. Depth and something enduring. And that takes work. That takes cultivation. I've met tons of people in my life, certainly because of my investment banking business, who checked off the box big time on the financial success side. When you looked at their relationships, it was a sad story. Firing partners, divorces, the kids not talking to them, and so on. A second really key ingredient is taking care of ourselves. As we go through life, you can get into some bad habits, whether that's just not getting enough exercise or not taking enough time for yourself to rest and reflect. It means mishandling nutrition and a variety of things. So taking care of yourself physically is very important, and emotionally. There are a group of things people routinely do that get in the way of being emotionally healthy, and that relates very much to being happy as well. And I think just add one more little sweet nugget, it's not the entire list, but is to have some spirituality in your life. And for me, what I mean by that is 2 things. One is being in awe, being so much appreciative of the world we're living in, the amazing things that are just right there in front of us, whether it's a flower unfolding or a little bug that was a lot older than human beings been around on the planet. Just the beauty, the majesty of this planet. And then right after that, related to spirituality, is having humility. when I go out, I realize very quickly I am just a little grain of sand on the beach of planet Earth, and I'm a nothing, a zero, completely insignificant when it comes to the universe. So all those things come together for me in a way of being successful, and also I have an orientation to being of service. As kind of you were outlining, some of the many things that I've done in my life is because I believe that I have a duty to make this planet a better planet. People, animals, Mother Nature, what have you, and I'm delighted to do that. It gives me a lot of vitality.
We are, as we discovered earlier, for everybody, we had our pre-podcast chat, and most regular listeners are familiar with that, and so we talk on Mondays, and we discovered how simpatico we are, that we believe so much of the same thing. I love your definition of success, and I really, on spirituality, we're very much in sync, and we're going to spend that will be the last question. That's the way I like to end our podcast. But I have to say that I wrote a book a handful of decades ago that was titled Getting the Right Things, Personal Strategies for Reinventing the Life You Want. I think I wrote that in, I want to say 95. I'm not sure. It's been that long since I published. But I had 4 Ps for people to live by that are very similar to what you say. But I did the 4 Ps were passion, purpose, people, and praise. And that we need to do something in each of those 4 categories in order to have a life that means something. So what are you passionate about? What do you do that would be like you in conservation, although that would fit in purpose? You're so passionate about that. And I'm with you. We're simpatico on service. I believe a lot in service. And then people, in relationships, it's critical. And I go in depth in defining relationships and how we need to nurture relationships. Purpose, what are you created to produce? What are you created to make a difference in? And finally, praise, what is your spiritual life about? What is your internal life about? And I have little worksheets and what authors do in creating all that. You as an author are very familiar with that. But that sounds not dissimilar from what you articulated. You know that?
Yeah, absolutely. And Charlie, our conversation on Monday is of no surprise that you would have told us all now about your terrific book from a few years back.
A few years, yeah.
The thing about your 4 Ps is each of those 4 parts are really powerful, important, and it's the intersection, the overlapping elements to those 4 Ps, or my list of things that I was talking about, is where the real juice, real action takes place. It's when you're really thriving, when you're really maybe reaching your potential, when you can do that. Because if you're only in one domain, doing a good job, check, yes, good, fantastic. But when you add a second and a third, and you do all of these, that's when you're really motoring along. And life is not a struggle. Life is a joy. You've got enormous energy, too. That's the other incredible benefit doing this.
Yeah. You know what I want to do? I love you talking about integration, because my next question has to do with integration. And so I did it's not lightweight what we just talked about, but the easy question. I'm going to jump right into the deep and personal, because you shared something that you agreed that you could share on the show. And I think it's an integration of interpersonal and purpose and certainly passion. I think all of what you mentioned, I mentioned, come together in this question. Now, you describe yourself as someone who has learned much from making mistakes. I so agree, but that's not uncommon now, is it, Rand? A lot of people are saying that we learn from mistakes, and that's our source. However, rare is the time anybody ever talks about their mistake, what they messed up on and what they learned from it. And I asked you about that, and you told me a fabulous story about you and your daughter, the physician, and how you went about resolving a personal conflict. Do you mind telling us that story?
I'd be delighted to share that story with your listeners, Charlie. It's The story, of course, it's in my book as well, so it's there in the public domain.
Yeah, and we need to talk about your book, Thriving, how to attain happiness.
Great health, happiness, and prosperity.
Yeah, I've got a link on it. It will be, when we publish, there'll be a link to Amazon on the book for you. So go ahead and tell us the story.
I want to tell that story maybe a little bit shorter than the one we talked on Monday, but I want to add two other stories as well in the time that we have for this question, which is a juicy question. To that story, what I realized about, a dozen years ago is my daughter and I were not having the same frequency nor the quality of conversations. She had pulled away. And at one Thanksgiving, I said, let's go take a little walk between the main meal and yummy dessert. And she said, sure, Dad. We went on, and I said, I really miss that relationship we had, and I have the feeling that we need some help we can't solve this by ourselves. We need to find somebody who we're both comfortable with, who we can talk to and clear the air and get back. Would you be willing to do that with me? She said, yes, I would, Dad. I said, why don't you come up with a couple of suggestions of somebody who you're comfortable with, and I'm willing to come down to you. She lives about an hour and a quarter from me. I'm willing to make this work for your schedule. She's a doctor. And she suggested somebody, and the person she suggested, I almost got whiplash. I found myself nodding my head again and again with what this
now, this is a therapist that you're talking to.
A therapist.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
And so I said, let's go meet with her. We met with her about 6 times, and basically what we learned how to do is communicate. We were miscommunicating. She would say things, and I missed the emotional content of it. Or she would hear something I said, and she would think of it from a very different perspective. She would think that I was being critical about some friend of hers I was asking about, and it was not the case at all. So we learned an active listening set of techniques, which, again, I include in my book, very important. My gosh, I'm shocked that it took me all these years to come across that and learn about it, but I did. Went through a whole box of Kleenex during those sessions, but it really helped her. She was able to unload all of these that had been collecting for a very long period of time. And so we learned a new technique. I'm definitely much more tuned into emotional content when somebody's talking, whether it's her or really, frankly, anybody. So I'm deeply appreciative of having that experience. And our relationship is close to where it was all those good times.
I have to comment because I am so impressed that we are all familiar with couples counseling. But we are always, when we say that, we're thinking marital counseling. You had couples counseling with your child. That is so admirable. And I've been in therapy for 45 years and 35 years. 35 years I've been in therapy. I don't think I've ever heard of anybody doing couples counseling with a child. I think that is so admirable, and it's such a grand idea if you have two willing participants saying, okay, it's part of this problem is me. I am part of the problem. And you get two people saying that and that are willing to do something and make some actions, you are proof that you can make a difference in your relationship.
Yeah, thank you, Charlie. It's really true. It's really true. I hope your listeners can absorb power of what you're saying. I want to tell another story also. This happens to be about my daughter. Not that all my mistakes are about her at all.
Well, you did okay. If she's a doctor, you had something to do with that. You did okay, bro.
Yeah. Thank you. This is because we're now, right now, I don't know when the podcast will be released to the public, but right now we're in time with the Paris Olympics. And I took my family to the 1996 Atlanta Olympics. And I remember my daughter, she was 12 years old. No, she was 14 years old, and she had attitude. She's very smart, a girl, but she did something either to me or my wife that it just made me very angry. I got angry. And when I get angry, you don't want to see that. I got big and I got loud, and I started yelling at her. This guy out of nowhere came up and said, hey, you need to cool it down.
Really?
And And I think of all the times in my life I felt embarrassed, that was one. I got red in the face. I thanked him. Fortunately, he left right away. And I pulled my family aside. There was my son, a couple of years younger than my daughter. There was my wife. And I said, look, I owe you an apology to you, my daughter, but I also owe an apology to my son and my wife. I said, what I did was not good. It was inappropriate. It was not helpful. I lost control, and I apologize. I apologize most sincerely. Please forgive me.
Holy.
And then I got teary-eyed.
Oh.
And they looked at me, and they realized that I was sincere. It wasn't just because somebody had called me on being a jerk.
Mm-hmm.
And it stayed with me. I can't say that I didn't ever lose my cool again. But it really made me say to myself, hey, if you're going to be that upset, take a walk. Walk around the block. Do something. Cool down. Very important.
That is a wonderful story. Isn't it we are so reluctant. I don't want to say we live in a society that is reluctant to do this, but I think it is by human nature, and it's by ego, and it's by our self-protective mechanisms that we are reluctant to take responsibility. And it's very easy to blame and criticize and make the other person the problem. And we could be right. There could be problems with the other person. But if we don't take responsibility, I'm a recovering alcoholic. And Alcoholics Anonymous is very strong on taking responsibility. And they call it cleaning up our side of the street. And that's what you did, was you cleaned up you referred to that, you took responsibility, became accountable, and was attempting in that moment to clean up your side of the street. I applaud you for that. That's wonderful.
Yeah. I want to thank you, Charlie. I want to say one more story.
Okay.
So this is a college story, so much younger, and I have a degree amongst my various degrees, in mathematics. And as a senior project, now I was a number one math student in the math department, and grading papers and the head math tutor and all this stuff. I was a big guy in the department. And so the senior math course, you had to design a program. You had to design a course. So I decided that I was going to go outside the lines. I was going to design a course that brought in outside speakers, that was really very practical, like what kind of career could you have using a math degree, and so on and so forth. I thought it was a brilliant course. I would love to.
Well, I'd love to know what kind of career you can have with a math degree. So go ahead. So tell me more about it.
So the chairman of the department, who's is a professor for that course, gave me a C in that project.
Oh my!
I'd never gotten a C in my entire life. This is not how I rolled. So I went into her for office hours, and I said, whatever her name was, I guess I misunderstood. I thought about it. I decided to bring a little bit of the olive branch. I said, I think I must have misunderstood the assignment. So I've reread the instructions, and what I'd request is that I have a chance to redo it so that the course is really much more in keeping with what you had in mind. And she said no. She had an attitude about me. There were for a variety of reasons for that. But she said no. Everybody had one shot. You had your shot, and you got a C. That's the end of the story. And I went away from that. I had to think to myself, wow, this is all about power.
Yes.
I had none. She had a lot. She was totally able to give me on that project. That was within her prerogative. There's nothing that required her to give me a second chance. I did a good job. I replayed what I said and how I said it, my tone and everything else. And I said, yep, I did a good job with that. I did not tell her anything like, that's ridiculous, that's unfair. I didn't go to any of that. And I thought to myself, this is life. You have to realize when there are times when you are powerless, and you have to behave in a certain kind of way, and you don't have power. And there are ways to accumulate power that you can accumulate before you go into the situation, if maybe you can set it up that way. But if you don't have power and you buck it, and you got to be prepared for the consequences. And I said, that's a huge wake-up call for me. And I appreciate it. It was a life lesson.
Yeah, how did you know what I'm curious? From that lesson, how can you this is a very difficult question. It would be for me if I was asking it to me, but can you think of a situation where that lesson helped you later in your life?
As an investment banker for all of my business career, I've had to deal with people who had a lot of power, whether
Right.
it was the CEO of a company
Right.
or it was some lawyer who thought they were the smartest person in the room or whatever it was. And I think that experience in college, I was 17 years old, allowed me to assess the situation. Can I think of a particular example? There are several that come to mind, dealing with the big egos on Wall Street. And again, I might be doing a lot of the work, and the quality of my work, I think, was universally quite good. But if I was doing something that was a little different than what they wanted, and I had to, what I decided to do about that was clarify ahead of time. So this, if I understand you're asking for this, would it be okay if I did something a little different? And then I listened really closely, because if the answer was no, then don't do that.
Yeah, just go with it. Yeah, as a consultant, I have to do that. When I'm working, I finished my working career as a partner in thought or executive coach of CEOs I had 5 CEOs of billion-dollar companies, and there comes a point where I know certain things that I knew I was more prepared for the task at hand than they were, but they were so strongly opinionated and felt so strongly about something, I had to do a workaround. I was not going to change them. I knew I was not going to change them, and I was not about to fight that battle. So I said, that's great, let's work with that, let's move on, and figure out a way to work with that, work around that, rather than go through that battle of trying to get them to think as I think.
Yeah, it's just really, I can just picture exactly what experience you had there, Charlie. In my own company, there's nothing quite like running your own company if you have the skills and you have the temperament and you have the discipline to do it. In my company, I developed a bit of what I might call radar. So I'd meet a new potential client, and I'd quickly assess whether they were the kind of person who would work together with me and listen. And not that whatever I said was what we were going to do, but more like there was a conversation. There was a sense of partnership.
Oh.
And if I sensed the answer to that was no, they were the boss, they were paying the bills, I was going to just execute, I would find very quickly a way to say, let me find somebody else to work with you. Get out of that. Out of it before it started.
I think that was true with me as well. That's why I changed my title from executive coach to partner in thought, and that if I could not partner with someone, then I couldn't serve them well. But every time, we had enough pre-work to say, I think we can work together, and that's very helpful. I have a question before. It's about break time, isn't it, Paul? Or can I have a question first? Okay, I have one question before, because it's right on. It was a question of a subject that you brought up that I really, in our conversation, that I really like, and I think it has a lot to do with what we're talking about right now, and that is you indicated that you felt strongly that culturally and individually, in conversation or in politics, or especially when there's tension that's going on, we need to move from debate to dialogue. And I like that. And my way of phrasing it is, I'm asking myself internally, are we chatting or are we evangelizing? And because especially when you talk politically, people are trying to evangelize you to their way of thinking. You end up trying to evangelize them into your way of thinking, and neither's going to work. So we need to dialogue, not debate. Talk to me about that.
I think what you just outlined is so critical, especially for the world we're living in now. The word polarization is one of the most frequently used words we have going on right now. And it's because we're in a kind of either debate or an evangelizing kind of mode rather than being in some kind of a dialogue. So let's take a minute and look at what is dialogue. Dialogue as opposed to debate, they're very distinct things. And again, our language sometimes gets flimsy and we misuse the words. Debate assumes that there is a correct answer, that you have it. Whereas dialoguing assumes that many people have maybe a piece of the answer, and that together you can find a solution. So they're hugely different, right?
Right.
Debate is often combative, and the whole notion is that the people on each side of it are going to attempt to prove the other side wrong. Who likes to feel like they're being made wrong? Dialogue is really all about being collaborative and working together to find a common understanding. It takes investigation, and it takes a lot of listening. So debate is about winning, whereas dialogue is about exploring the common good. And once you go through a process like this, you realize that debate is trying to get enough ammunition to ratify your position, whereas dialogue is really about working together to discover new options that are jointly, mutually acceptable or exciting.
That reminds me of something that we will talk about right after break, but it's a subject that both you and I are very keen on. And dialogue, as I'm listening to you talk, dialogue seems to me to require a critical human attribute, and that is curiosity. If you are curious, you can dialogue. Let's talk about that after the break. Hi there, this is Charlie Hedges, and you are listening to The Next Chapter with Charlie and my new friend and very bright and intriguing person, Rand Selig. And we are talking about life, the universe, and everything. And we are going to continue on curiosity. We were talking about debate and dialogue, and it occurred to me as we ended before the break that a key attribute or element of dialogue is curiosity. And Rand, I know curiosity is big for you. Talk to me about curiosity and dialogue and just the impact of curiosity on life.
There's a study done many years ago that identified 7 personal qualities that led to success and life satisfaction. I usually pause when I'm talking to people to see, do they want to know more? Yeah, people do. And I said, okay, I'll go through the list. But one of those, Charlie, is being curious. One of those 7. This is how important it is. It's not one of 50, it's one of 7. And what is curiosity about? There's a number of parts of being curious that are great. One is it makes life a lot more fun. Think about a time you had an adventure, you took a trip. Charlie, you mentioned doing a lot of traveling this last couple of months. What made it fun? You were going to places where people were dressed differently. There was different kind of food. Maybe the architecture was different. Maybe their accent was different, or they spoke a different language. It just makes it fun and interesting to be part of something like that. And being curious is part of it. It makes you vital when you're a lifelong learner. Now, we all change throughout life, and the world around us, of course, is changing. There's another really big bonus, a big bonus to being curious, and that is it helps with conflict resolution. So think about a time when you were butting heads. So we were just talking a minute ago about debate versus dialogue. So here you are in the situation. It may be somebody you know and have a long relationship with, maybe somebody who's just much more casual and recent, and you're really disagreeing with them, to the point where you really have tuned out whatever they're saying. You're almost talking over them. And so if instead of getting in that debate format and getting your temperature to rise, you turned into a curious person and you said, hey, I'm curious. Why did you say that? What makes you think that way? You don't add, you numbskull, dimwit. No, you don't say something negative like that. You just, in a very sincere way, I'm curious. Tell me more about that. What it allows is for them then to share. Now, that doesn't mean you're sitting there shaking your head no. That doesn't mean that you're going to have to change your point of view about anything. It means that you are listening to what they have to say and you can ask questions, follow-up questions. Oh, that's interesting. Is that something recent? Did you grow up learning it that way? Tell me more. And it can make all the difference in whether that relationship is going to stay alive, whether it's like the end of the story.
I love that. I live by a little axiom that infrequently, but I tell people, never believe what I say today, because with new information tomorrow I could change my mind. So I'm always limited to the information that goes through my filter. And if I'm asking somebody curiously, I don't understand how you can believe that, and if I'm genuinely open-minded and curious, they can feel that. They can tell me what they believe with freedom without being judged. I don't have to believe. I don't have to buy into what they're saying, where it becomes my personal view of life, but I can appreciate theirs. I can appreciate where they're coming from. That's, I think, one of the big things missing in our country today. And thank you for bringing that up. That's really good.
Well, if it's not yet clear, either what I said or what you said is not bringing this point home, it's also about your tone. If you say, "Oh, I'm curious," but you're really dripping with sarcasm.
Yeah, you're saying I'm curious with your arms crossed.
Or you say, "I don't know how in the world you could come up with that." I'm not curious either. Right?
Yeah.
You gotta watch your words. You got to open your heart to it. Again, there's no commitment on you to change where you are. It's an openness to them as a person and whatever they're saying. That's all. That's the limit of it.
My wife is the assessment queen. She's also an executive coach and trainer, and she is the assessment queen. She had so many assessment tools, and there's one assessment tool that I took that is superior to everyone that I've taken, and it is called VIA. I should put this on the notes. VIA character assessments, and there are 25 character qualities that they work with, and they will rank order your character qualities, and they like to do top 5. 2 of the top 5 for me are love of learning and curiosity. And so that can't help. That really, it's just, I'm proud of those, because it allows me to be open. It allows me to do podcasts with people from all walks of life and talk with people, and always looking to learn something from you.
It just proves, I think, that what you just said, Charlie, that it makes you a great podcast host.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. That's very kind of you.
I don't say that to butter you up, because I don't need to.
No, but that's very kind of you. With that, podcast host, what we've not talked about is your great passion for conservation, for the planet, for people and Mother Earth, your involvement in Sierra Club, and it seems that you have almost daily activities to protect and revive Mother Earth. Talk to me just a bit. Just give us your view on the planet and what we can do as individuals to make a difference.
Thank you for asking that, Charlie. This is our planet collectively, and a lot of stuff is going on where things are not going very well, and these are decisions. Some people think they vote every 2 years in some kind of election. Obviously, we've got a big one coming up this November, but it's not about voting. We vote every day. We vote every day. We vote when we go to the store. We vote when we turn on our air conditioning, or we drive too fast, or we drive a car that was consuming a lot of fossil fuels or stuff like this. We're voting all the time. Mm-hmm. And we're voting on how we spend the money. Are we buying products that are really triple wrapped and have a lot of plastic on them? And it goes on and on. This is not a surprise to anybody, I don't think. And these are choices. These are choices we make, and we can be very conscious about that in our daily lives. Now, I'm not going to buy that. I'm going to go buy a bigger box of the thing and put it in the pantry or wherever, and then just take out a week's supply of it. I don't need to buy 10 boxes with all that cardboard and other stuff. And next time I buy a car or something, I'm going to think about some of the qualities that make this a good car for the planet. There's that level of things for sure.
Okay.
There's all kinds of things we can do just around our own, wherever we live. If we live in our own homes or in an apartment, do you have plants that are good for bees and birds? Do you have a bird feeder? Now, there's ways in which you can have a bird feeder that's not good for birds because then they get dependent. But are you doing things like that? Are you planting? Are you planting in your neighborhood or in the town or wherever you live? Planting trees? Are you just signing up once or more times a year to do that? It's partly beautification. Yes, part of it's the lungs of the planet come from trees. And there are big projects going around the world to plant like 1 billion trees in the next 10 years or so. We need it. So there's tons of things we can do. They're not demanding of us necessarily. Yeah, I've stepped out, as you were describing. This is something that's really important to me. I enjoy it. I enjoy being out in nature. I enjoy that. Other people may not. I mean, maybe not so physically easy for them to do some of the things that would require lifting or bending. I understand, not a problem. But it's not all about just you and enjoying life. If you want to continue to enjoy life and pass it on to generation after generation, you need to do a little bit of work to take care of the dear planet we have now.
Do you know, in the Bible, in the first book of the Bible, there is what I call the divine mandate. And there are three mandates that the Creator gives to the created people. And the literal translation is be fruitful and multiply, subdue the earth, and rule over every living thing. So it's about, the first one is about people. Be fruitful and multiply. It's about developing relationships, as we've already talked about. That's essential. But I like the second one, and that is totally ignored. Not totally. It's not. You don't hear it from the pulpit that much, but it's the second commandment: subdue the earth. It's nurture the earth. This is yours. Mother Earth is yours. Mother Earth is out of the very essence of the deity that created the cosmos, and it is part of the nature of this. Of the Creator, as part of the Imago Dei, the image of God. And the commandment is to nurture the earth, to take care of it. It is our divine responsibility to take care of the world.
Yeah, I'm so glad you brought this up. Again, it's back to how people interpret certain words. And in some cases, the words were not English originally, right? And so they've been translated. And,
they were all not English. Yeah.
Exactly. And that's true of every religion, right? Or not every, a lot of them. So this idea of being fruitful or subduing or these things, there's other interpretations and other understandings, like nurturing is very different than subduing. Being fruitful could mean about prospering in the relationships. If that's what the meaning is, I'm going to sign up for that. I'm going to sign up for nurturing.
Absolutely.
Using my power to put down and have the planet well beyond its carrying capacity, or getting rid of our polar bears, because who cares about dumb polar bears? No, we'll just create a couple of more stuffed animals, no problem. That's not where I'm coming from.
Yeah, I'm with you. Thank you for that. Thank you, and thank you for all your service. I wish we had time on the show for you to tell people what you do in your community and how you clean up around the freeways and pulling weeds, and not just weeds, but unnatural invasive plants that are taking over. And you're actually doing something about that, you and your wife, on a daily basis. I so appreciate that's great for you.
We call it a date. And unlike our normal behavior where we organize a mini army, we just say we're going to go when we want. We're going to go just the two of us, and we're going to go for 1 hour or 3 hours, whatever we feel like. We enjoy it. And sometimes you'll catch us holding hands. It's great. It's a date.
That's very cool. Okay, I've got 2 questions before we go. And both of them are, truly, both of these questions are podcast subject questions. But you are just so knowledgeable in them that I want to talk about it, and we are so much in agreement. And you are an advocate of choice. It is choice and kindness and service. If I were to try, I could put up maybe a handful of other words, but those are 3 key words in my vocabulary. And I love when you talk to me about the power to choose, and that you can choose to be angry or judgmental, or you can choose to be kind, forgiving, and curious. And you can choose to ask questions in dialogue rather than doing all the dialogue, or rather than doing all the talking. Talk to me about the power of choice.
This is really the heart of my book, Thriving.
Oh, yeah, we got to talk about the book. We haven't even talked about the book.
Yeah, thank you. This is the essence of what I'm saying. If I could summarize it in a sentence or two, is we have unbelievable power to get on the road to thriving in our lives by making choices about who we spend time with, what we do with our time, our habits, and even our feelings. All of these are choices. They may not seem like choices right away, or you may not feel like you have a lot of room for choice, but I push back on that. I've designed my own life. I think other people can too. And in a sort of poetic way, I like to say we can all be the author of our own story. Enormous power to do those things.
Oh, and that is what Thriving is about, right? Your book, Thriving.
Exactly. And I like to ask the question of what kind of person do you want to be on your life journey? And the way I frame that, I try to be a little humorous about it. I say, what kind of pirate do you want to be? Do you want to treasure your possessions, or do you want to treasure your relationships? It's a choice. And I refer, do you want to be a Ziggy? I say, what is a Ziggy? I say, I'm referring to the great Zig Ziglar. He was a motivational coach, passed away about a dozen years ago. And one of his great lines is, be the kind of person when if somebody said something bad about you, no one would believe it. And look around. Could you imagine being that person? You can work at that. You can work at being that kind of person. Yes, indeed.
Zig is so quotable. That is, I love that. Are you the kind of person that if somebody were to say something bad about you, they wouldn't believe it? People wouldn't believe it because because you reek kindness and humility and non-judgmentalism. That's beautiful. So let's close up, and I want to close up with this question. That is, since we took a break and we've come back maybe 4 months now, I'm closing up all my shows on my guest view of spirituality, and you talk about that. You say you are more spiritual than you are religious. I'm curious, how then do you define spirituality?
Yeah, spirituality to me is really all about connecting with 2 big, deep things. One is being in awe. And the way I do that, and this is just my way, is I go out in nature. And I look around. And I see something new. Maybe it's a bud of a flower. Or maybe it's a butterfly. And I know from my science, this is a butterfly that used to be a caterpillar. look at something that's very old, a very big, large tree that is growing way up into the sky. And I just go, this is amazing. And a lot of these creatures have been here a lot longer as a species than humans have been. And I just get in awe of that. And then right away, I also get very humble, which is given my life and the how grateful I am for being so successful personally and professionally. Being humble is a good thing. I realize when I'm out there and I'm connecting spirituality, I'm connecting nature in that way as the vehicle, how significant I really am. And that those two things are the heart to me of my spirituality.
I love that. I think those two define it. So I call him sort of my spiritual mentor, and we are not friends. We don't work together. We have met once and spent, I think we spent 5 minutes together, which was really cool. But that's all the time we spent together. But his writing and his speaking is Richard Rohr. And Richard Rohr is a powerful, powerful spiritual communicator. And Richard prays he's a Franciscan priest, but he has a group that's called the Center for Action and Contemplation. And we want action in the world where we're making a difference in the lives of people. And it begins with a heart of contemplation, of contemplating and trying to become intimate with the divine, our attempts at intimacy with the divine. And Richard prays for daily. He prays, this is so crazy. I said I could never do that. He prays for one humiliation a day.
That's great.
Who wants to pray for that? But that because he's so well known and so loved and everybody follows him, but he prays for one humiliation a day to remind him he's not as great as everybody thinks he is, and even more, he's not as great as he thinks he is.
That's a lovely concept. Charlie, I know we're going to be wrapping up in a minute, but I want to come back to something you said at the very beginning.
Oh, okay.
You said I was retired.
I know.
I want to push back on that hard.
Please do.
I really am on a little crusade, a little warpath about that word retirement, because I've seen so many people who work hard, they've saved some money, and now they don't have to worry about money anymore, and they can go to this other place called retirement, and they become so much smaller after they no longer have a big social network. They no longer have challenges. They've worked through their bucket list. So I'm really advocating for rewirement. Change the word from retirement to rewirement.
Okay.
Come up with a new purpose. Even if the purpose is being the kind of person we've been talking about, being kind and being generous and listening and asking questions and looking to help somebody else, your neighbor, or maybe somebody is not doing well in some way or another, and offering to help them, drive them somewhere, bring them some food. Maybe it's something there in where you live. Just doing that's purposeful, and that's enormously important purpose. I was speaking recently at a retirement home, and I said, this is a really important thing. All you folks, I'm looking around, you're probably in your 80s, you've done well enough to be able to live here. That's great, but you need to continue to have purpose all the way to the very end.
Thank you for pushback, because I concur. I wholeheartedly agree with you. In my life, the only difference in my life now is before. I don't have to do anything. I get to do the choosing. And I choose service and good deeds, and I choose pleasure and learning and excitement. That's why I'm out of the country. I was in 7 countries in the last 3 or 4 weeks. My 70s are a vital time of my life. And I just so agree with you. And I think I need to do a show on that. We need to talk more about that. Thank you for the pushback.
My pleasure. And if nothing else, I'm just trying to be a voice of encouragement and inspiration for people to be positive.
There you go.
Being positive adds 7 or 8 years to your life, gives you power, where being negative and being cynical just diminishes your power. It's a great place to be, and it's a choice. It's also a choice.
life design and your life is a choice. Rand Selig, thank you so much for spending time with me today. I've just loved it.
Charlie, it's been a great pleasure. I am shocked that an hour's gone by.
I know it has. It has. Also, and we'll have to do a round 2 sometime. I hope you'd be willing. That would be great.
Oh, my pleasure. Absolutely. You let me know.
Okay. I also want to thank our listeners for tuning in to the Next Chapter with Charlie. And remember, you can always find our blogs and our podcasts on our website, thenextchapter.life, L-I-F-E, thenextchapter.life. And until next, this is Charlie Hedges signing off. Bye for now.